are watching The World 24/7 on the NDTV network. I'm Parmeshwar Bava. Let's begin with a quick look at the headlines we're tracking at the moment. An oil tanker capsized off the coast of Oman. A search is underway for its missing crew of 16. 13 Indians are among the 16 crew members missing. Search efforts have so far been unable to locate any survivors from the crew of a product tanker that capsized off Oman. Usha Vance, Yale law graduate and trial lawyer, was thrust into the spotlight this week after her husband, J.D. Vance, was chosen as Donald Trump's running mate in the U.S. presidential election. She was raised in San Diego by Indian immigrants. We get you the finer details. U.S. billionaires are coming out in support of Donald Trump's presidential bid after his assassination bid. The big question is whether Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his running mate threatens to alienate wealthy Wall Street donors, since the Ohio senator is a fan of steep tariffs and robust antitrust enforcement. Well, J.D. Vance has labelled China the biggest threat to the U.S. soon after Donald Trump picked him to be his running mate. France's President Emmanuel Macron has accepted the resignation of the Prime Minister Gabriel Attal's government, which will now serve in a caretaker capacity. The UK could finally be feeling the summer heat this weekend, and health alert has been issued for large parts of the country. Some parts of the UK had weather warnings for rain at the start of this week, but this is all set to change quickly with temperatures soaring by Friday. The world's rarest whale, the spade-toothed whale, is thought to have washed up on a New Zealand beach. When an oil tanker has capsized off the coast of Oman, this is what Oman's Maritime Security Centre has confirmed, adding that a search was underway for its missing crew of 16. Now, the MSC, which is run by the Omani Defence Ministry, did not specify the cause of the capsize yet. But what we do know is that 16 crew members were on board, including 13 Indians, and the crew members are currently missing. Oman's Maritime Security Centre is said to have informed that the vessel was a Comoros-flagged oil tanker which capsized around 25 nautical miles southeast of Ras Madrakah. The Maritime Security Centre has also said that search and rescue operations were underway in an effort to rescue the missing crew. In fact, officials have added that the Comoros-flagged oil tanker ship name is Prestige Falcon. It had 16 crew members, and they have confirmed that 13 Indians and 3 of Sri Lankan nationality were on board this ship, Prestige Falcon. Let's get you the latest from the United States now, where a Milwaukee man is dead after being shot at by 5 Ohio police officers near the Republican National Convention. Meanwhile, immigration took center stage as the Republican National Convention resumed, with speakers spotlighting a key element of former President Donald Trump's political brand that helped endear him to be the GOP, to actually garner a GOP base when he began his first campaign back in 2015. U.S. billionaires are coming out in support of Donald Trump's presidential bid after his attempted assassination. But the big question is whether Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his running mate threatens to alienate wealthy Wall Street donors, since the Ohio senator is a fan of steep tariffs and robust antitrust enforcement. One cannot deny, though, as Trump now steps into the election race, reinforced by a wave of sympathy and surge in polls, the political dynamic of the November elections has undeniably shifted. Meanwhile, Usha Vance, Yale law graduate and trial lawyer, was thrust into the spotlight this week after her husband, J.D. Vance, was chosen as Donald Trump's running mate in the U.S. presidential election. Usha was raised in San Diego by Indian immigrants. Here are the finer details.
Our family story is an Ohio story. My husband, JD, grew up in Middletown, and things weren't easy. His mom struggled with addiction, and his dad wasn't there. But JD was lucky. He was raised by his loving grandmother, and he served his country as a Marine in Iraq. He's an incredible father, and he's my best friend.
Usha Vance. As of 2014, she was a registered Democrat. Her husband is now Donald Trump's vice presidential pick. The daughter of Indian immigrants, Usha grew up in a San Diego suburb. She and JD Vance met at Yale Law School, and the pair were married in Kentucky in 2014 and blessed by a Hindu Pandit in a separate ceremony. Donald Trump's running mate has previously said he feels humbled by his wife Usha Vance's stellar CV. She certainly has the credentials. Mrs. Vance once clerked for Brett Kavanaugh, now Supreme Court Justice on the District of Columbia Court of Appeals. Then she clerked for Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. Both men are part of the highest court's conservative majority. Critics note that it's a conspicuous resume for a woman whose husband gave a speech in 2021 titled, "The Universities Are the Enemy," and rarely missed a chance to bash the establishment as he campaigned for Senate in 2022. Usha definitely brings me back to earth a little bit, Mr. Vance told the Megyn Kelly Show podcast in 2020, adding that she is the powerful female voice on his left shoulder. Some political watchers argue that her career has put her in an awkward contrast with her husband's political persona. Usha has played a significant role in her husband's success. She assisted JD Vance in organizing his thoughts on the social decline in rural white America, which inspired his best-selling memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, which was adapted into a film directed by Ron Howard in 2020. As JD Vance gears up for what is certain to be a grueling campaign for the White House, he may need Usha Vance's counsel more than ever before. Parmeshwar Bawa for NDTV. Joining us for a quick comment on the NDTV network, President-elect American Telugu Association, Jayant Reddy Challa. Thank you so much, Jayant, for making time for us. The Telugu American community is the fastest growing community in the US. In fact, if we look at the stats, there are about 1.25 million Telugu Americans out of the 5.1 million Indian Americans in the US. I mean, there's no denying that they're excelling in the tech space, the corporate space, as well as politics.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for having me here for brief comments. It's so heartening to see the Telugu people excelling in the US and across all fields. Like you mentioned, if you take Indian Americans in the United States, there are about 5.1 to 5.5 million Indian Americans. And out of that, 1.25 million are of Telugu origin. If you look at the number of students, number of high-skilled immigrants coming into the United States, majority of them are of Telugu origin. So they are not only excelling in the technology, but they are into the business. If you look at the top IT companies, Microsoft and Adobe, IBM, they're all headed by Telugu Americans. So it's the Telugu is the fastest growing Indian American community in the US. And we have one other notable Telugu American that is serving as the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. Yes. Maryland is a state very next to Washington, D.C. Aruna Miller, she got elected as the Lieutenant Governor of Maryland about 1 year ago. And she is serving very well, and we are very proud of her as well. And with the selection of JD Vance, we are so proud that he is married to Usha Chilukuri. Usha's parents are from Telugu states as well, and she is such eminently qualified. She is a Yale graduate, and she will make sure, I believe, that Indian interests are also, taken care of in this administration.
Right, Usha definitely has some incredible credentials. Thank you so much, Jayant, for joining us on The World 24/7.
Okay, you're welcome.
Meanwhile, in other news, Emmanuel Macron has officially accepted the resignation of his Prime Minister, Gabriel Attal. The 35-year-old, who has only been in the position since the start of the year, and his cabinet will actually remain in place during the upcoming Paris Olympics. while a new head of government is nominated. But the former Prime Minister and his cabinet will only be responsible as a caretaker government for ensuring the continuity of the state. Now, in principle, no political measures can be taken during this interim period by the temporary government. Although this situation may work during the transition phase, it will clearly pose a democratic problem in France if it lasts for a long time, especially considering that negotiations for a replacement prime minister have been fraught with complications following France's legislative elections. The other big story, the IMF has revised upwards its projection for India and said the country is now expected to grow by 7% in 2024 compared to 6.8% projected in April. So overall, global growth is projected to be in line with the April 2024 World Economic Outlook forecast at 3.2% in 2024 and 3.3% in 2025. The IMF has kept the 2024 global growth forecast unchanged, but the IMF has slashed the US growth outlook to 2.6%. But interesting to note that in a boost to the Labour government, the IMF has actually hiked the UK's growth outlook. For further clarity, we have with us practitioner, development economist Dr Aruna Sharma on the broadcast. She's also a former member of the RBI Digitization Committee. She has also served as the former secretary in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology. Thank you so much, Dr Sharma, for joining us. How is India managing to outperform certain economies despite our recent inflation figures?
See, if you look at the way the GDP is calculated, the population number is multiplied. So that is an advantage. And of course, we are a growing state with a lot of growth and investments. And that is giving us a boost where the numbers are going up. So if you look at it, that our continued thing is after the pandemic also, we are in the range of 7% growth, even though different statistics have thrown up different numbers. But if you look at the IMF number also, it says to be a bright spot. It's a big consumer market, as well as we have an advantage of having the manufacturing, service sector and agriculture with us. So that's why the growth path is very good. But having said that, looking at the buoyancy that we need, we have to touch 10% if we want to be in a per capita income range to be better, because that is where the governance factors comes in and that is where the concerns come in.
Right, but also, Dr. Sharma, interestingly, at a time when developed economies like the United Kingdom and the United States are witnessing a cost of living crisis, what is the rationale behind the IMF lifting the forecast for the United Kingdom while the US growth outlook has actually been lowered to 2.6%?
You have said it a very interesting way the IMF has flagged it, because if you look at the US, even though the growth, the base is very high, and the per capita income was $80,000, right? So if you look at it, the little bend into that brings it down and makes the existential crisis. Our per capita is only $2,000 and odd dollars. So there the existence crisis is little less. So when you compare to that, but I will say that we cannot ignore the United States because their diversity, and they are still leaders into the technology sectors. They still are going ahead. But IMF has strangely also flagged by 2050, the GDP of China will be the highest, which will be 58 trillion US dollars. So in the sense, it is for the US, it may lose the position of the lead by the way it is going now. So this is a very interesting way the economy is settling it, an opportunity for India. But then, like I said before, we have to target to be at the rate of 10%.
Indeed. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, for joining us with those quick comments on the World 24/7.
Right. Thank you. Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.
Meanwhile, scientists have for the first time discovered a cave on the moon. At least 100 meters deep, it could be an ideal place for humans to build a permanent base. This is what scientists argue. Researchers have found evidence for a substantial underground cave on the moon that is accessible from the surface, making the spot a prime location to build a future lunar base. The cave actually appears to be reachable from an open pit in the Sea of Tranquility, the ancient lava plain where the Apollo 11 astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin first set foot on the moon more than half a century ago. But analysis of radar data collected by NASA's lunar orbiter, the LRO, that revealed that this pit, the deepest known pit on the moon, leads to a cave 45 meters wide and up to 80 meters long, an area that's equivalent to 14 tennis courts. Lorenzo and Leonardo join us on the NDTV network now. They are from the University of Trento. Lorenzo is a professor and head of the Remote Sensing Laboratory. Leonardo is a teaching fellow at the Department of Information Engineering and Computer Science. Thank you so much for joining us on the NDTV network. Well, this is a breakthrough discovery. It seems to confirm decades of speculation about caves that might run under the lunar surface. But talk to us about the process behind the discovery and how long it took you.
Okay, let's say that what we have done is to reprocess some radar images that have been acquired by a mission of NASA in 2010. We have developed a technique in our laboratory that is recent and that allows us, elaborating this data, to identify some reflection, some signals that point out the presence on the bottom of a pit, which is in the Sea of Tranquility, of a cave. So this was possible thanks to the development of novel data processing technology. And what happened is that analyzing this echo that we have in the data, we are able to reconstruct a geological modeling of the entrance of a conduit, which is connected with this pit that we have on the moon. What is interesting is that we detected the cave, the initial part of the cave, and we have also evidence that it is possible to have access from the surface into the cave, which is very important for the next steps of exploration. Well, this was a long path. We started analyzing, let's say, the cave on our planet, on the Earth, and we use similar data acquired by Earth observation satellites, and we try to detect and to analyze the parameters of lava tubes and the cave that we have on the surface of our planet. Then, on the basis of these developments, we could, let's say, exploit these techniques for the study on the moon.
Right. Leonardo, this marks the first time that researchers have confirmed an accessible cave, likely a tube left by flowing lava under the moon's surface. Could you describe the cave and what makes it an ideal base for astronauts? Why is it a prime location to build a future lunar base?
So first, it's important to state that actually more than 200 pits have been discovered on the moon, but we provide the first evidence of a cave departing from a lunar pit. Okay? In terms of habitability, well, the interior of the moon and the subsurface and the interior of the cave is currently unknown. And so it would be interesting to explore these caves. What we know now and what we estimated is that this cave, it's about at 150-meter depth in the lunar surface, and it's about 45 meters wide and about between 30 and 80 meters long. But it could be longer than that because with our radar technique, we can only see part of it, maybe extend further in the subsurface. So this is what we know now, and for sure, we need more investigations, like sending, for instance, robotic missions to understand the full interior of it and how it really looks like. It's a new discovery, and of course, some parts of it are unknown, such as how the caves really looks like in the interior. Well, there are studies that shows that having a lunar base within a cave compared to the surface have several advantages, such as protection from micrometeorite impacts and protection for the radiations, because over the lunar surface there are harmful radiations for the human body. Moreover, there are theoretical studies showing that it should provide a stable temperature which is in contrast with what we experience on the surface of the moon, where we have really large variation of surface temperature. Another important point is the resource availability, because there are studies that hypothesize that within these caves, there are resources such as water ice that could be very helpful in terms of lunar exploration and, of course, habitability, because astronauts could use it.
Well, space agencies hope that the caves and potential networks of them could be used to build safe habitats for lunar explorers. But how is this discovery likely to impact the future of space travel?
Well, let's say that this discovery is very important for exploring the subsurface of the moon. This is something that we did not do yet, also because we did not have any evidence of where, focusing, for example, a robotic mission for the exploration. Now, for the first time, we have the evidence that at the bottom of this pit that we have analyzed, there is an opening and we have a conduit, a cave. So we can start from there with a robotic mission, a rover, to enter into this cave and explore that and discover what we have in the subsurface. So let's say that we are adding another element to the exploration of the moon, the study of the subsurface on which we don't know anything, and that can become very relevant, both for basis but also for the scientific return that we can get from this.
Well, Lorenzo and Leonardo, thank you so much for making time for us and joining us on the NDTV network. Congratulations on this breakthrough discovery. With that, we're stepping into a very short break. News and updates continue in a moment. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back. External Affairs Minister Dr S. Jaishankar, who's on a two-day official visit to Mauritius, reaffirmed India's consistent and continued support for Mauritius in its quest for progress and expressed pride in being a partner in its journey towards modernity. My colleague Mohammad Ghazali has been tracking this entire official visit very closely. He joins us for a quick update at the moment. Ghazali, what have been the key topics of discussion? We know an MOU has been signed between India's ISRO and Mauritius MRIC.
Yeah, certainly, and this was a very important statement issued, a joint statement in front of the Mauritian Prime Minister. Mr. Jaishankar said that we are planning to launch a satellite for Mauritius in the near future. And why? Because for a space cooperation, an exchange of project documents has been done between India's ISRO and Mauritius, a space body there, which is working on a space exploration. Besides that, India has also made very categorical statements supporting Mauritius' claim on Chagos Island, which has been occupied by the Britishers, and during that time, during independence, when Mauritius was got into disputed territory. But despite that, Mr. Jaishankar said very categorically, when it comes to territorial integrity, India always stands by Mauritius. And besides that, we also recounted that how our President Draupadi Murmu was the chief guest on the National Day. And besides that, Mauritius has been India's key partner in the Southeast Asian region, yet again implying that how India's neighborhood first policy and Sagar policy are all the reflection of these policies. That EAM Mr. Jaishankar said that Mauritius becomes one of those countries where he has taken his first bilateral trip as the Foreign Minister of India.
As always, Ghazali, thanks so much for joining us with the latest. Let's turn our attention now to the UK. Well, Brits could finally be feeling the summer heat this weekend, and health alert has been actually issued for large parts of the country. Some parts of the country had weather warnings for rain at the start of this week, but this is all set to change quickly, as you can expect in the UK, with temperatures soaring by Thursday night and Friday. According to the Met Office, London is expected to bask in temperatures up to 29 degrees Celsius on Friday, while it will become very warm in the southeast part of England. Well, to Bangladesh now, where at least 5 people were killed and dozens injured during massive student protests there, opposing quotas for government jobs. High youth unemployment has made the public sector more desirable, but more than half of those jobs are reserved for various groups, including 30% for family members of freedom fighters from the 1971 War of Independence. Now, the weeks-long protests, The biggest challenge to Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's government since she won a fourth term this year intensified, as you can see on your screens, after she used the term Razakar to label those opposing the quotas. The word actually refers to people who collaborated with the Pakistani army during the 1971 war. But the questionable dichotomy is what lit the fuse, leading to students exploding with renewed vigor, as per experts on the ground. Well, in other news, European Union foreign affairs ministers are set to snub Hungary by organizing their own foreign affairs summit in August, instead of traveling to Budapest for Prime Minister Viktor Orban's event. Hungary, which holds the rotating presidency of the Council of the EU, plans to host a foreign affairs summit in Budapest on the 28th and 29th of August, a prime opportunity for Viktor Orban to try to shape the bloc's foreign policy agenda and for his foreign affairs ministers to stand in the limelight. But after Orban obstructed aid for Ukraine and his self-styled peace visits to Putin and Xi Jinping, which he didn't coordinate with the EU's 26 other national leaders, many foreign ministers have been hunting for a way to avoid becoming props in what they believe would be another Orban propaganda show. Thank you for investing your time in watching this edition of The World 24/7. We'll keep tracking the latest developments for you. Do stay tuned.